Welcome back to Advertising is Dead with Piyush. Hey Piyush, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here. I've been a huge fan of all the conversations you have had, and I'm so happy that I'm here and I can discuss about what I do and what Rooter is.
One of the interesting things about you is the journey you've taken to get to where you are, and I think the career trajectory is a really interesting one. And I'd love to start off with that because whenever I talk to some members of the audience, they always talk about, okay, if I really want to do this, how do I start off my career and do that? And I always say that you never know where you start and where you kind of move towards. And so I'd love for you to kind of start off with that, start off with your journey.
Well, it's been quite an interesting journey. I was studying computers during my graduation. I was trained to be a computer programmer, but as luck would have it and my interest, I got into consumer marketing. And within consumer marketing, I got into advertising. So advertising was my passion point back in the last decade. I was really, really passionate about how brands work. Then I said, okay, the work on the other side of the table, which is the marketing guys who control the campaign, is quite interesting. Then I switched sites. I joined Dish TV as a senior brand manager, worked there for 2.5, 3 years, was in the middle of the high definition services launch in India. And then I said, luxury industry is quite interesting. I got an offer from Swatch Group, the Swiss watch company, to head their marketing for one of the brands called Rado, which was the number one brand. I did that for 5 years. And during that stint, I realized that the startup industry and the way entrepreneurs are changing the world, everything is very, very good. And I really wanted to be a part of that movement. So I picked my passion of sports and gaming, and I said, this is the time. This is the time to sort of perhaps attempt in changing my destiny, create something which hasn't been created, and that's how Rooter started in 2016. So this is sort of a highlight about how my journey has been. I'm happy to double click into it and go deeper into it as you suggest.
Yeah, sports has been something that you've always been you've been passionate about, right? It's been an area of focus for you, not, and it's not about just about work. It's just in life that's a core area of focus. Was that one of the prime reasons why Rooter started off with the focus it had, or were there also elements in the market where you saw, okay, this is an opportunity, this is something great to dig into, or a bit of
Yeah.
both?
Yeah. No, I'll be very honest. I think the larger and the bigger reason was sports. For me, I wanted to be in and around sports, and I'll say to a large extent, gaming as my career for the better part of my life. But and then I kept looking for different kind of work. I was looking for a job, and I said maybe I can work with few different companies, but I could never land onto something that was very interesting. At the same time, I was I think one of the first few in my social circle, including my friend circle or even where I used to work, who got hold of social media, the power of social media, the power of content very early. So for me, the idea was to sort of build something or get into something where I can use my experience and passion and understanding of content and content-led community model. And if it can be done for sports and later on for gaming, I think that's the best combination. So you can say that while it took a lot of time, but it's a combination of both. But doing sports was something that made it easy for me.
What's also intriguing about your story and story of Rooter is the fact that there's this conversation about the need to pivot as a business, and how that is one of the strongest points of innovation. Where you say, when this is the route we're gonna taking, uh, you know, either and for multiple reasons you decide, okay, we need to kind of relook at the direction you're kind of moving in, and you move towards it, and that kind of helps you kind of grow and kind of scale up as well. So when you look at Ruta and just the origins of it, I'd love for you to kind of talk about how that pivot happened, and how um, you know I wouldn't say a shift of focus, but I'd say a really a realignment of sorts that happened.
Sure. So one of the things, Varun, that I learned in the journey is, we have seen this with a lot of people. Like a lot of people say that when it's easy or slightly easy to get into, say, an IIM or an IIT, but quite difficult to get through it. To get through those years and to come out of it with a proper degree. Startup journey is very similar. When you start, yes, taking that decision of taking that plunge, taking those risks are very high, but the real journey starts after you have started up, and then how the journey begins and what you can do. So for me, one of the things that happened is that as we were building the product, we realized that there are a lot of things in building a tech product that comes into play for a company or for that product to succeed. Retention being one of them. What is the kind of growth you're getting? What kind of virality you're getting? And eventually, what kind of monetization you're getting? We kept learning these important metrics as we were building the company, and we kept changing the product at each and every stage depending on what was happening within the company and within the product, and at the same time what was happening around. Like when geo came in, when content became mainstream and people didn't have to worry about data, that led to a lot of industries and products coming out, right? That also helped us. That is why we got into sports content. But what happens is that for an entrepreneur, having survived 2 3 near death moments, for somebody to have seen good and bad times, there comes a point where you realize and you put all your learnings into one place and then take the rational decision. For us, the key decision was that sports industry is great, huge passion point. We all love it, but it has some inherent issues with respect to the calendar, with respect to the fact that if your product is not applicable 24/7 or for 12 months in a month, sometimes you tend to struggle a lot. And that's where we observed gaming. So for 1.5 years, me and my team were observing how gaming was growing, how PUBG was growing. What are the advantages of gaming? What kind of industries can be built around it? Where we can apply our strength and our work in sports into gaming and see how it can come up. And that is when we were ready to get into gaming and game streaming and now esports. But then I think the pandemic and the COVID really provided that trigger where we said, this is the time, let's not waste time in doing anything. And that's the thing. That so to answer your question, I think the key thing here is to prepare for what's going to happen. It won't happen over time. And I think that goes for one, taking a plunge as an entrepreneur, and also while you are building a company, maybe during that time as well.
What's interesting about what you just said, right, is the fact that it's not about, okay, you're on one track as a business and then you suddenly have to shift. It's saying that, we'll continue doing what we're doing. There's an opportunity in another space that is connected in many ways. Let's start building up our almost a stream of what we could do there. And at the right time, you kind of almost, it's not that you're aligning it in a way that it's almost seamless, right? You don't have to do one or the other. You can do one alongside the other and slowly build it up. And at some point of time, make the switch about which is the primary focus and which becomes the secondary focus. So I think it's very interesting. So if you had to run through how that process happened,
Yeah.
especially for business, I'd love to hear that.
No, you said it exactly the same way. So when in March 2020, me and my team, Piyush, my co-founder, we decided to start building game streaming tools and launch this particular feature on the app. At no point in time we thought we'll have to exit the sports space. We said let's build it. We had an assumption that the user base is pretty in conjunction with each other. So we built this feature. We built a community of game streamers, and we got some very strong signals. Like our growth literally became 7x, and then it became 20x over the period of 4 5 months. Retention peaked. We became the #1 app on Google Play. So lots of good signals came. And then after 3 4 months of having both the products, sports and gaming on under the same umbrella of Rooter, we looked at the data and we said that two things. Number one, gaming is certainly growing much faster than sports, and sports is going to have an issue of calendar, sports not happening because of pandemic, etc. Number two, and most importantly, that there is a difference in a bit of an audience. The gaming audience may not necessarily want to see sports within the same space. It's a very purist space, right? So by forcing them to watch sports content or by having a separate tab, we might not do justice to them, and we may lose out in the run. So it was a very difficult call for a company that has been building a sports community for so long to let it go and focus on something that was perhaps the need of the hour. And yeah, I mean, just to answer your question, we took a call which was based on three: industry, data, and looking at the audience profile. And I think now that we have exited sports for about 7 8 months, we thought that was one of the best decisions that we took.
If you have to look at the audience from a sports and from a gaming perspective, right? What for you have been common aspects about the audience, and what have been like vastly different in just terms of, because I feel a lot of times when someone's looking at from outside and the assumption is, okay, this is like when you say esports, it's like sports. So the market, be it the marketing, be it the content, be everything else, almost should work in the exact same way, but that's not necessarily the case. So what would the primary like commonalities and differences be?
So I think one commonality between these two audience sets is that they are both very passionate set of people. It comes really. I mean, in terms of the amount of time they can give to their interest, which is either sports or gaming. So time is a huge factor, right? You can listen to music for half an hour, 15 minutes. You can perhaps read book for an hour, but when you sit down to play or game, or
Mm.
when you watch sports, you can perhaps give 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
So they have time. So that's a great commonality. They have passion for it. And the other thing is that there's a bit of an overlap in terms of age group,
Mm.
but sports is still very very vast. I mean, everybody watches it across different age groups. Where gaming becomes interesting is the fact that one, people believe in the community much more stronger, and the loyalty is very high. So a good game streamer having millions of followers is such a big reality, because what he has managed to build on is by having not just playing the game well, but also creating good content.
Mm.
And it's about what he says, how he's engaging the audience. So that's a skill, and that part of the overall content network or the creators economy we are talking about is going to play a very important role from here. And I think we'll talk about it a little later. But the key point here being that the community that the gaming builds is much more thick and has multiple layers. It has a layer of a creator, it has a layer of the game, it has a layer of the device, whether it is
Mm.
a PC or a mobile or whatever. And it also has a layer of location to a certain extent, because a lot of things happen offline. So that is one big commonality. And the last bit is the way they express themselves. I mean, these two audiences, sports is like passion, people will kill it. But when you take the esports part of gaming, where
Mm-hmm.
people are competitive, they are running against the prize money, and they're representing a team, it's very competitive. And I think that's something you will see when we when our new championship of Valorant comes in. So yeah, these are the ways we look at both the audiences. And sorry, just to make one last point, Varun,
Mm.
and I forgot, I thought I'll talk about it. The other thing which is very interesting about gaming audience, and something that we didn't see as much in sports, is their propensity to pay.
Mm. That's true.
These kids, they are really spending money on gaming. It's not just about a good phone or a headphone or subscriptions to play the game. The in-app purchase market of these games are very high. Game streaming globally has proven track record of more than 90% revenue coming through users. So
Mm.
so whatever be the in-app currency, etc., which is where they are slightly ahead of the sports audience, and I'll say much more, because we've seen what PUBG while they were here, or what Free Fire is doing. I mean, these guys are making about $150 million plus revenue per month from, per year from India, and that's like huge. That can scale much faster.
You make an interesting point about the propensity to spend, right? And that's one of the. I mean, I was recently reading about the whole Apple and Epic Games cases going on, and that's one of the prime factors, right? You're talking about, okay, the amount of money that is being spent in gaming itself by people who are playing, and for the length of time they spend on it. It's almost like they're. I go back, and it'll make me sound old. It'll make me go back to the time when things like Second Life were a thing,
Yeah.
and where you're living an alternate life online. This is actually it. It's just that it's now spread in a very different way, and you're not replicating real life, online. You're actually, in a way, you're finding different forms and different ways to do it. So when you look at it from a business standpoint, for a company like yours, what would the primary areas of focus be? What are you seeing as key growth areas, moving towards the future? Not just from the audience perspective and that growth, but also from a revenue perspective as well.
Yeah. No, so very interesting point you raised, and yeah, you're right that Apple incident, it's is basically just goes on to prove that how much monetization can happen in gaming and esports,
Yeah,
that people are actually taking it so seriously.
yeah,
I mean, we all know. I mean, I was reading a data a few days back that gaming is far bigger than music and the movie industry now, and then there are a lot of people in US which are saying that the future communities will be built around gaming. Like
mm,
now we meet for different interest areas, but eventually the next generation will perhaps get connected when they play game together, or either
yeah,
offline or online. But coming back to your key point, so here are the things. Number one of the things that we learned during our experience of building Rooter over the last 12 to 14 months was the fact that this product or this category can really grow on virality.
mm,
The word of mouth and the propensity to invite your friends to sample a product or to join their community is very high. I mean, one of the data that we share with almost all people who discuss Rooter with us is that 90% plus people who have joined Rooter over the last 12 months have actually come through word of mouth and through invites. We have not advertised, we have not done any advertising. We don't need to do advertising,
Mm.
honestly. It's so strong. So this is one key aspect of gaming community which works very, very well, and it completely depends on what kind of product you have built. It won't happen for everybody. It didn't happen for us for a very long time, but when it happened, it scaled. Like
Mm.
we can go grow for like of whatever growth we are getting right now, we can grow at 3x at our will. We are just taking a call whether we can sustain the cost and everything for tech. So that's one part. From the monetization perspective, this particular audience has very interesting way of dealing with brands. So we started with advertising. Any high traffic product offers you an opportunity to offer them ads, brands, engagement, etc. At in a very non-obtrusive ways. We don't have a literally like we don't bombard people with ads, but we
Mm.
try and fill them in the timeline just the way you say it, see it on Facebook or Twitter, where it's part of a
Yeah.
timeline. You're not like
Yeah.
going separately to see an ad. So that's one. So advertising is given, as traffic increases, advertising is the first step. The other thing that we did and we very successfully scaled is a B2B revenue model called performance marketing,
Mm.
where it's not about ads, it's about how many users are we giving to different businesses. It can be
Mm.
in terms of downloads, it can be in terms of registration, sign-ups, deposits. That's one monetization model for us which has scaled immensely. It's directly proportional to the number of people, and we believe very strongly that that will come out as a great scalable model for us. And a lot of companies are doing it in different genres, but we like to believe that we control the gaming audience to a large extent as we grow more. And the last and most important, and then there is esports sponsorship, but that will take some time to scale. Like we're doing this tournament, we've got good sponsors, but that will take some time to scale. The most important learning about game streaming as a business, and something that Varun and I learned over the last 1 year, is that 90% of revenues that game streaming platforms globally make comes from users.
Mm.
The in-app purchase behavior, the marketplace model around having more than few gaming coupons available, the gifting economy. The gifting economy in gaming is so strong that a good creator can earn anything from maybe a $10,000 going up to $50,000 during a 3-4 hour stream. I mean, they are very strong, and that gifting economy is where most of the game streaming platforms earn a very strong commission. So we have just launched it. We are seeing some very good signals out of it. But once that picks up,
Yeah.
it becomes proportional to the number of users who are coming on our app. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's pretty diverse. I think one of the things that we've done is we're not just sitting on one model and saying let's make it work. We have opened up 4-5 models.
Yeah.
Two of them are showing great signals, and we quite believe that that will help us do the monetization at scale.
And one of the most fascinating things about gaming creators also is it's not that you're only watching them for how they play the game, but just their personality, what they bring to it. In many cases, it's the humor. In some cases, it's just entertainment a lot more than it is actually how they play the game. Um, a little while back, you mentioned the creator economy around gaming. I love your POV on seeing how that is enabling almost like a different. I don't call them a subset anymore. I think it's mainstream now in the sense of just that entire creator set of people around gaming.
So yeah, so there are a few things about these creators which make them very unique. Number one, they are engaging audience in a live environment, in a real time environment, which is crazy, right? You're not like uploading a video on say a short form video content or anything, right? Here you're going live, and you don't you it's like playing sports in a stadium. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, people don't have time to rehearse or whatever. So that makes it very competitive, that makes it very skilled. People learn how to engage their audience, right? They use music, they use a lot of things. Second is the time. It's the time that they engage users for. I mean, to be able to engage your user for 2 hours every day on a particular platform is huge. It's like literally watching a movie every day, a fresh
Yeah.
new movie or a new movie every day. So time and the time that they do is very high. Then the third thing is the entire role of audio. That is
Mm.
why they invest a lot on audio equipments, the quality of audio, how they, like gaming, like sports also has very quite a few highs and lows, right?
Mm.
So, for
Mm.
example, if they're going to hit a target, the way they will they'll go about it, and they'll make you feel that adrenaline rush is what makes it extremely unique. And that's the skill they need to have. And last is of course the entire video camera bit, that they invest in the environment, they invest in the background, they ensure that there are right cameras and everything. So I think it's a lot of skill put together. Then of course the storytelling. I think playing a game again and again, they learn the skill and they execute that skill. Because one interesting insight about this market is that while people also watch it for entertainment, and it's a great piece to watch, I mean, one can sit through a gaming session for 2 hours without getting bored. One of the key reasons why viewers like watching these creators or these streamers is because they learn how to play the game better.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of learning which is there, and people pick it up. So yeah, so these are the bits about what makes a game streamer interesting, and how therefore brand engagement and how their monetization, etc., can be structured. Coming on to your other question of creator economy, I think uh, basis the traits that we spoke about, basis the fact that they can go live every day, create fresh content, have an audio and video medium, and also engage users. Like I'll give you an example. On our app, if a player is streaming, they have an option to put an ad of a brand that they pick right below that.
Hmm.
So if I'm a streamer and I say that, okay, dude, I love this headphone. See, the quality is very good. We are talking. Do you want to buy it for yourself? There's a link right below my stream. Click on it. You will get a code which will give you a discount because you're my follower,
Hmm.
and just complete the purchase. Huge.
Yeah.
And this is just one of the categories I'm talking about. So the fact that they can bring that product within the video, talk about it, and also convert the sales right then and there is something that will make it very, very compelling as we go forward.
I think what's also interesting is that, and I actually want to ask you this: you, how much did you have to kind of build out at scale before you brought? Because to be able to do that, even though it was a switch and not necessarily a pivot, um, there's a lot of, I'd say there would have to be a lot of robust tech builds that went into making sure this is, in terms of both from a streaming perspective, from an audience perspective, even all these other pieces that you built in. So how much work went into that to really kind of make sure that, okay, this is something we're definitely doing, and this is how much we've kind of we've built out? Because the more you're talking about it, I'm like, this is like a lot of work that's been done. And to say that this switch was literally a year ago means that in the background there has to have been so much happening over a longer period of time.
Yeah. So again, a great insight that we learned, and I'm happy to share that learning. So one of the things about a lot of people ask us, what is Rooter? Is it a game streaming platform? Is it a esports platform? Is it a gaming platform? And my answer to that is, we are all of it, but most importantly, we are a gaming community. The operative word here is community. What is our moat? What is it that will perhaps take us to a much longer path ahead is the fact that we're building a very strong community, which is very intrinsic to social media platforms, people like you who have built such a great community through this particular podcast. And that is what we're trying to replicate there. Now, community is something that is, there's no formula for it. You can't just hire a person and say break a community. It's like playing a sport. And I'm sorry I bring in a sports analogy all the time, but it's like playing a sport. You can't just learn it by reading a book or by watching a video. You have to play it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we learned. So we are fortunate enough to start building a very strong community during our sports days. We build like what? I mean, in a good day, at a certain point in time, we used to have 150 live sports commentary sessions during a match, which meant 150 live channels going
Wow.
live at that point in time. And that was huge. Our vision was to create channels for different languages, different kind of people doing different things, etc., etc. We used that experience and we executed that for our gaming community. I mean, our team is excellent the way they were able to, the entire process of reaching out to different level of streamers, talking to them, convincing them to come to a new platform, giving them a reason, giving them tools, etc., was a very important part of it. So this is the process. I always believe that this can't be done overnight, and this is a good mode to create. The more important thing is that what is your approach towards community? Is your approach towards community that you go to the top guys and say, come here, and you think community is built? Or your approach to the community is that currently there are 1,000 people streaming in India. For it to become a huge success, it needs to be 10,000 in 6 months,
Yeah.
100,000 in 1 year, and perhaps 1 million over the next 3 years. This is what we picked. We didn't just say that we'll go to the top guys, pay them money, and get them here. The idea is that, and I keep saying this in multiple conversations, that we are a fan of what TikTok did to the short form content space in the
Yeah.
first 2 years, and what the other players are doing right now, all the other players, they didn't just go and pick the successful people in different mediums and said, come and make a 30-second or a 1 minute video.
Mm.
They understood that these guys can make some videos, but for it to succeed, they need to create content creators in India, and they need to make tools, and they need to make community, they need to monetize it. We believe that is perhaps the best way to do it, and that's what we are doing right now. We are building a community. We believe we want to be the reason why 1 million streamers will be in India in next 3 to 4 years, and whatever we have built over the last 6 months to 1 year is following this approach. And yeah, that's our community, that's our strength, that's our goal.
What you said is so true, right? Is that one of the reasons why the creator economy has been growing across multiple sectors is as the tools make it so much simpler to create, and in many cases zero cost. Like we're doing this podcast of a Zoom call, but you can as easily do this off your phones by just calling each other, right? Now the platforms enable that. So in many cases, you might not require any amount of money to even be spent to be able to create. And once that benchmark kind of goes down to that level, plus you give tools to create, tools to monetize, etc., people will gravitate towards it. And yeah, to understand people who are original to the medium rather than pull people who are not just popular, but I'd say that that for me the biggest thing about the creator economy. It's taken this focus away from celebrity culture to creator culture, which is so
Yeah.
interesting because you suddenly, I think every day you have about hundreds and thousands of people popping up who are creating something so unique and so different that suddenly there is no hierarchy anymore. You don't know
Yeah.
who's on top and who's. It's almost like a sports leaderboard to use a sports analogy back at you.
Yes, yes, yes,
So it's
absolutely.
almost like that in that sense. What do you think is that what I've always been intrigued to know? What is it about streaming that has? I mean, I understand the fact that you're watching people play and everything else and all the content, but there is something about streaming that has caught on and grown at the pace at which that maybe at some point I'd love to learn. Why do you think it has kind of scaled up the way it has the entire live stream experience?
Yeah, number of reasons, as I said, and one thing that I pointed out, that the fact that it is fresh content, it's new content, it's a content that you haven't seen it before, makes it extremely interesting. That's the power of content, that beyond a point, all of you, I mean you and I know so many other people, you've also tried to make the content interesting and brought in a new perspective, right? That is what game streaming offers, that it combines the content part of it,
Mm,
which is the voice, the experience, the video, etc., with a very good parallel, which is game.
mm,
Somebody who loves playing PUBG, for him to watch somebody play PUBG, like it's cricket again. Let's bring back
mm.
sports
Yeah,
again. We
yeah,
have to bring it back in every 5 minutes, I
yeah.
believe. Like, there is a huge intersection of people who either play or have played cricket in their life,
Mm,
whether it is for a day or a month or 10 years, and people who follow that game.
yeah.
Yeah, same with football in West or whatever. And that intersection is something that makes you relate to that particular content. When you watch live sports and you watch Virat play and everybody, you're like, dude, I know, like, what is he playing? How difficult, easy it is? Why do you feel for it? And then there's an angle of India, your club, your lots of other things. Gaming is exactly that. I mean, people who have had experience of playing, they just love it because it makes it something that is very relatable. And one of the interesting things about game streaming, and I like to bring it here, is that it's riding on two big waves which are happening in our country and in our market. One is gaming.
Mm,
So this has grown and this is exponentially growing now. Now PUBG is coming in with Battlegrounds Mobile India, and few other games are coming in. And the other part is content. In India, we are glutton for content. We just
mm,
love different kind of content. We can listen to it, read it, watch it. And when something makes a combination of that, I like to believe that that is something that should give everybody a lot of confidence, because you're bringing in two main growth streams into one.
mm.
You're providing a great intersection into one, which I like to believe is a reason why game streaming is picking up quite a lot.
Um, I'd actually love to ask you these questions. And if I was someone who No, is just starting off their career and saying, I'm in not only interested, but I'm like, it's something which I, as a consumer, really consume is the gaming side of things. But I want to make a career out of it. Not just as a creator, but something in the entire ecosystem. What are the opportunities that I have? What are the what are the kind of things that I could kind of jump into across different aspects of it?
Yeah. So very simply put, and something that you said a few minutes back, which is very important. One, it has completely brought down the entry point, right?
Yeah,
So you can do it on phone, and you can do it just by using your phone's headphone. You don't even need like a proper headphone to do it,
yeah,
right? So that is one that you can. So I think the first thing to do is that one needs to play a game and pick it and pick up the right game that suits you. For some people, it is a squad play like squad games like PUBG, Free Fire. For some people, it is basically a battle game where you're competing against other. For some people, it is racing. Some people, it is football. Like I mostly like to play sports games,
hmm,
tennis, cricket. Cricket, there is not much game, but tennis and football that I like. And then first you pick up the game, something that you're natural at, because once you're natural at it, you'll want to improve the game, and then you'll perhaps make better content on top of it. Second thing is that once you have mastered a game to a certain extent, then two options open up for you as a career, or as a even as a hobby or whatever. First is, if you're a player and you're playing a game which is competitive in nature, which has an esports side to it, where there are tournaments happening and people are competing with each other, you can become a gaming athlete. You can become an esports player, right?
hmm,
You can start to participate in amateur tournaments. You can eventually become a professional player. You can join an esports team, and who knows, you can be representing your country. I
hmm,
mean, now esports is going to be a medal sport in Asian Games 2022, and they are very serious about making it a medal sport in 2028 Olympics. So you can perhaps bring, and that is where the government of India and many other governments are getting very serious about gaming and esports in general. So this is one side of it, but this is like getting into the 11 members in the cricket
yeah,
team, because the funnel
exactly.
is whatever,
Yeah,
right? The other side of it is, the funnel is the opposite way, that you are a good content creator. There are millions of people who want to listen to what you're doing. You become a streamer. You first start with like we have a very simple way of pushing people. We say first complete 50 hours of streaming.
hmm,
When you complete 50 hours of streaming, you are eligible to be in a Rooters community program. Then we evaluate your performance. We look at your data. We suggest you a few things. You continue for a few more days, and if you're good, then nothing can stop you. I mean, you can start making money. You can make a career, and eventually, I mean, there are 17-year-olds who are making like 20 lakhs a month. There are
hmm,
crazy people who are doing a lot, right? So streaming side is the alternate way of the funnel, that it can open up. Like, we can have 1 million to 10 million creators over a period of time,
yeah,
because there is so much of available to watch for people. Like Twitch does crazy amount of content every day, and
yeah.
people are watching it. So these are the two ways that one can get into. Or you shouldn't do both. You can just play the game. But
Yeah.
then these are the three options. Yeah.
And also, if you play the game, then it opens up that even if you are taking up any form of even like a job or a career around this space, you at least understand how it works. I think that's the main thing, right? You have to be a user of some form in today's world for you to actually have some sort of insight into how to kind of use it as well.
Absolutely. In fact, I always remember this, and so Leander Pace is one of my favorite athletes. I just love the way he's built his career, what he did for India, and winning the first Olympics in tennis, medal in tennis, etc. And I've also been very fortunate to meet him, know him for a period of time. One of the things he used to say is that his father used to send him to play video games, like in those days when he was a
Hmm,
kid, and the idea was to improve hand-eye coordination. So his
hmm,
father used to say that if you have to be a good tennis player, you need to play that sport. A lot of times when you observe the sports people, the sportsmen, sportswomen, and athletes, while they play the sport, they also spend a lot of time in gaming, because
hmm.
gaming helps you build certain skills which you can't build otherwise. Hand-eye coordination being one of them. I think it's one of the best skills that you can make. Your timing can improve. I know I've read about many athletes who consciously play video game before they go and play the real sport,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
they want to get into the zone. Formula One drivers do this a lot. They do stimulation sports a lot. So gaming has a lot of other advantages, and that's why I think it's a very interesting world.
That's one of the reasons why I'm terrible at it, because my hand-eye coordination is by far amongst the worst you will find anywhere. I have realized that. Um,
Yeah.
it is by far the one thing I am terrible at the most.
No, but there is no right time to improve it. I think you should just pick up a game and start to do it. I mean, at least you can pick somebody when it's being thrown at you, on a human note. But I think, yeah, I mean, I personally believe that it is a game of life. For a long period of time, I used to believe sports is a way of life, and
Mm,
my life was built around sports. And ever since I've got into gaming for about a year or two, more seriously, more professionally, more like my passion, I realize it's beautiful. It's really a different world, and it's not about spending time, wasting time. It's a beautiful world, and I think everybody should be encouraged to pick up some of the other games, just the way they were encouraged to pick up some of the other sport.
Uh, you know, I'm just going to take this point to move towards the segment which I do towards the end of every episode, right? You just mentioned a few things, but apart from sport, which I know would be the obvious answer from you, because what I generally ask is, apart from what you do in your day job, what do you really focus on a lot in life? And for you, I'm sure that I was pretty sure the answer would be sport. But I want to dig deeper than that and say, is there something else that you spend a lot of time focusing on and doing?
So, couple of things. So I have a 5-year-old now.
Hmm.
He's opened up a world for me, which I never imagined. He's extremely passionate about space.
Hmm.
Wants to be an astronaut. Very passionate. I mean, he knows everything that I perhaps never didn't know till I'm here. So with him, I'm now gone much deeper into everything to do with sports, listening to podcasts, looking at those live streams from different YouTube channels, reading few books to him or him
Hmm.
reading to me. That's so it wasn't my inherent interest, but that is
Hmm.
something that he has built for me, and I'm quite thankful to him for that. The other thing that I really like doing is I used to read quite a lot till a certain period of time. Now it's come down to maybe 10
Hmm.
books a year or something like that.
Hmm.
So I won't like say reading is my like core thing, because I'm not really doing it like every day.
Hmm.
But the other thing that I've started doing quite consciously is to, understand, or rather pick up few things like gardening, like doing few things around fitness, which I was. So I used to, since I was a sportsman, I used to take my body pretty, consciously. I used to think that it will serve for me, but now I'm a little more conscious about it. Eating well, doing some few things otherwise. But frankly, I'm running two startups right now. One is Rooter, which is professionally, but my son is the other one. They actually started at the same time. He was born right when we were starting Rooter, and he opens up quite a few doors for me. And like I'll give you an example. Monster trucks. I never thought there's a world like that, and people watch so many videos and so many things happen, and then we've just opened up to that. So no, it's this. I'm quite focused. Music, sports, gaming. My son Yash. I think that's enough for now.
I love the analogy of your son being the other startup, because that's so true.
Yeah,
Uh, mine's 4, and Leah literally is one entire section of I wouldn't call it, not even work. It's just it's the best part of the day. Um,
yeah, absolutely. These guys push us quite a lot.
uh, but since you said you haven't been reading as much, but anything you've read, listened to, or watched in recent times that you'd recommend?
Well, I've certainly been watching. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. So ever since, so I used to play 5-6 days a week.
Hmm.
But ever since this lockdown again happened, I haven't managed to play. So I go out for a walk or a run for an
Hmm.
hour every day, rather 45 minutes to be precise. And that's where I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, Naval's podcasts, your podcasts. I whatever was left that I couldn't complete, I heard them out. So podcast is something that I quite like. There's one which is very interesting, which is Harsha Bogle has done a podcast on
Hmm.
ISRO. He calls it ISRO. I really like that one. I think there's something to it.
Yeah.
Again, see, there's a correlation with what
Yeah, I
I
went
said
back to
about my
space.
son, right?
That's actually the great connection, right? The sport and space both together in one podcast. You obviously have to listen to
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, so surprisingly, he's not talking about sports. He's a narrator
Yeah,
of how
yeah,
India's. So he opens up by saying that Rakesh Sharma went to space and Mrs. Indira Gandhi spoke with him, and then he
yeah.
goes back that where it started, and he goes back to that Tipu Sultan days who made the first rocket and how he
Hmm.
handled British, and then beautiful story. I am still on fourth or fifth, I think, episode, but I am loving it, and I'm consciously taking it very slow. So that's one podcast I recommend. Naval is, of course, I think his thinking, where the way he
Yeah,
looks at the world is, I mean, you can listen to him 5 times and you'll have 5 different thoughts. So
I
he's
agree.
he's really, I think, one of those guys. then most of the podcasts is this. In terms of books, um, honestly, I have been writing a book for some time. It's of a journey of a sports fan who does something. I don't want to open up the entire plot,
Mm.
but for that book, I have been reading quite a lot on few football clubs, because it has a core relation to football clubs in England and stuff, and it has a very strong correlation to the way India has grown since 1947. So there's a correlation between the two. So I've been reading quite a few books like India After Independence. Ramchandra Guha was something I've read twice actually, because there are a lot of things I need to note down. Few other things I'm looking for more books which are capturing India since 1990 when India opened up. So few books I'm reading in that space, and of course about football clubs. I'm not a big football fan, like not as big as a tennis or a cricket fan, but I'm reading because I need to pick up few learnings from that. So lots like Alex Ferguson's biography. There's a book called Soccernomics, which is very interesting, which
Mm.
combines economics and soccer together. So yeah, so multiple things, but yeah.
Uh, and what is generally my last question of every episode, and I keep trying, and I've made it more challenging for myself in recent times. It used to be much simpler to ask this question. Now I have to think about for each guest as they're talking through the episode. I'm thinking about, okay, what is the peg I'm going to add to it. For you, I'm actually going to say that how is the economy around? No, wait one second. I mean, revise myself. Why
Yeah.
will the economy around gaming never die?
Well, it will never die because gaming is only going to grow from here, which is the obvious answer. But let's go a little deeper on it and figure it out of why it will never die. The key reason for that is that gaming attributes to a lot of values in our life which
Mm.
are not easy to take away. It is not about, it is a lot about happiness that it provides to people, which is why music, uh, movies, content, these kind of content, and gaming is just like that. It's what makes people happy. It's not something that can disappoint anybody at any point in time, and therefore it's going to grow. And anything which is related to happiness perhaps should grow and should keep growing from here. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is that it is something which has come down to the lowest common denominator in terms of what you need to do it.
Mm.
It's literally like switching on your switching on a switch, and you can get light or you can get a
Mm.
fan. Gaming is very simple. You can just go on your phone and you can play. It's no longer about getting a big PlayStation or a
Yeah.
PC or a whatever, right? It's really something which is very accessible. And the third thing, and this is where I like to bring in a fintech, model for it, which is that gaming thrives on microtransactions.
Mm.
It is not something for which you need to pay $800 a month, or you need
Yeah.
to pay perhaps even $100 a month. It is something which is the technique is built around microtransaction, and I would like to believe that everything which has an angle to microtransaction perhaps can have a much better sustainability and growth opportunity than something which is bound by a huge amount of money. And these are the three or four traits that I mentioned. I strongly believe that will push gaming from here. And yeah, I think I would love to be around it for as long as possible.
While you've spoken through this episode, I kept going back to this movie which I've watched a few times, which is called Ready Player One,
Okay.
which is a fabulous. So it's a book that Spielberg recently made into a movie a couple of years ago. It's entirely built on the fact that everybody in the world at that point of time is living their life in games and in an entire environment like that, and everything flows through that. But as you're speaking, I'm like, that's not necessarily a very far away reality, right? That
Yeah.
is pretty much what we're already kind of living as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a reason Ritik is a character in Free Fire, and there's a reason
Yeah.
why lots of things. I mean, okay, just to make one last point, and I think it's an interesting point since you mentioned, and I'd like to bring in this, and I'm sure people know about it. But we all know that Netflix is getting into gaming,
Mm.
right? They have
Mm.
officially announced that they want to start making games,
Yeah.
which is great news for us and for the entire gaming industry, which means that not just the gaming publishers, but a lot of these big companies are also thinking of making games. Now,
Mm.
Netflix, key reason to make games is because they want to now bridge that gap between gaming and content.
Mm.
So a good content or a good content can be converted into a game, and a
Yeah.
good game can be converted back into a content, right?
Yeah.
And they've seen success with few of them. Great example of storytelling, our real life, and gaming becoming a huge intersection. And I just loved the way they explained the approach.
Mm.
And I like to believe these are all good things happening for gaming, and our life will be built around it in future.
100%. Thanks a ton, Piyush. This has been a fabulous conversation. Tons of pointers there, and thanks a ton for coming on Advertising is Dead.
No, I just when you reached out, I was just so looking forward to it. And as you could see, we spoke about so many things that we don't generally articulate in our normal life, right?
Yeah,
So thanks a lot. I really, really enjoyed. I really look forward to how it comes out. I hope people like what we discussed. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
I'm sure they will.